r/confession: my stepdaughter called my kid trash, so I got her car repoed. The voicemail notification lit up my phone at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, and I knew before I even pressed play that my carefully constructed world was about to implode. Mom, please call me back. Something happened at school today and I need to come home early. Please. My 12-year-old son Marcus never called me mom in that shaky, small voice unless something was really wrong. I was in the middle of a client meeting, but I excused myself immediately and called him back. Hey baby, what's going on? The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Then came the words that made my blood turn to ice water. Jenna told everyone in the cafeteria that I'm trash. She said I don't really belong in our family and that you and Dad are just pretending to want me around until I turn 18. My stepdaughter. My husband's precious 19-year-old princess who I've been bending over backwards to support for the past 3 years. The same girl whose car payment I've been covering for 8 months because she needed to focus on her studies instead of getting a part-time job. Marcus, sweetheart, that's not true and you know it. Did other kids hear this? Another silence. When he spoke again, his voice cracked. She had her friends laughing at me. She called me the charity case and said everyone knows foster kids are damaged goods. She said it really loud, Mom. Like, the whole table heard. I had to grip the steering wheel to keep my hands from shaking. Marcus wasn't just any foster kid, he was MY's son, legally adopted 2 years ago after being in our home since he was 9. He'd been through hell before we got him, bouncing between homes, dealing with neglect and abandonment that no child should ever experience. We'd spent months in therapy helping him believe he was truly wanted, truly loved, truly OURS. And now Jenna, who lived in our house, ate our food, drove the car I helped pay for, and benefited from the family stability Marcus and I had built with her father, was systematically destroying his sense of security. I'm coming to get you right now. We're going to figure this out, okay? I picked up Marcus from school and watched him trudge to the car like a beaten dog. His shoulders were hunched, his eyes red-rimmed. This confident, funny kid who'd been thriving for the past year suddenly looked like the scared 9-year-old who'd first walked through our front door. At home, I made him hot chocolate and listened to the full story. It wasn't just today. Jenna had been making comments for weeks, little digs about his real parents not wanting him, jokes about him being temporary, reminders that he wasn't actually related to anyone in our family. She'd been careful to do it when her father wasn't around, and she'd been escalating. Today was just the first time she'd gone public with her cruelty. As I tucked Marcus into bed that evening, he looked up at me with those big brown eyes that still sometimes held too much worry for a 12-year-old. Mom? Am I really going to have to leave when I turn 18? My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. Never, I whispered fiercely. You're my son forever. Nothing and no one will ever change that. But as I closed his bedroom door, I realized that promises weren't enough anymore. Someone in this house was actively trying to damage my child's emotional well-being, and it was time to make some hard choices about what family loyalty actually means. The confrontation happened the next morning while my husband Jake was at his early meeting. I'd been awake since 4 a.m., replaying Marcus's broken voice and planning exactly what I needed to say. When Jenna finally stumbled downstairs at 10:30, hair perfectly messy in that effortless way that probably took 20 minutes to achieve, I was waiting at the kitchen counter with her car keys in my hand. We need to talk. She barely glanced up from her phone, heading straight for the coffee maker. About what? And why do you have my keys? About what you said to Marcus yesterday. And apparently what you've been saying to him for weeks. That got her attention. She turned around, and for just a second, I saw something like panic flash across her face before it settled into practiced innocence. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't. My voice came out harder than I'd intended. Don't lie to me, Jenna. Not about this. She crossed her arms, and suddenly she looked exactly like her father when he was being stubborn. Look, if Marcus is making up stories. You called him trash. In front of half the cafeteria. You told him he doesn't belong in this family. The mask slipped completely then, replaced by something cold and calculating that I'd never seen before. This wasn't the sulky teenager act she usually pulled. This was deliberate. I told him the truth. He's not actually your kid, and he's not actually my brother. You can play house all you want, but everyone knows foster kids come with problems. I'm just preparing him for reality. The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. He's adopted. Legally, officially, permanently my son. Your brother. Half-brother, she corrected with a shrug. And only because you convinced Dad to sign some papers. That doesn't change what he is. What he is, I said slowly, is a 12-year-old boy who's been through more trauma than you can imagine. What he is your father's son. What he is part of this family, whether you like it or not. Jenna laughed, actually laughed. Please. Dad went along with the adoption because you wanted it, but we all know Marcus isn't really his priority. When push comes to shove, blood matters. Dad will always choose me. There it was. The heart of it. She wasn't just being cruel to Marcus, she was testing boundaries, asserting dominance, making sure everyone knew where they stood in the family hierarchy. And she was confident enough in her position to be completely open about it. So you're going to apologize to him. Today. And you're going to stop with the comments, the jokes, all of it. No. The word hung in the air between us like a thrown gauntlet. Excuse me? I said no. I'm not apologizing for telling the truth. Marcus needs to understand his place, and honestly? So do you. This is my dad's house. I'm his real daughter. You're just the woman he married, and Marcus is just your charity project. Don't get confused about who actually matters here. I set her car keys down on the counter very carefully, because my hands were shaking with rage and I didn't trust myself not to throw them at her smug face. Those are interesting priorities, Jenna. Let's see how well they work out for you. She grabbed the keys, still smirking. Whatever. I'm meeting friends for lunch anyway. Try not to let Marcus have another breakdown while I'm gone. The front door slammed behind her, and I stood alone in my kitchen, listening to her car engine fade down the street. She had no idea that engine was about to stop running very, very soon. I spent the rest of the morning sitting at my laptop, staring at the auto loan website with my finger hovering over the Remove Authorized User button. Once I clicked it and stopped the payments, there would be no going back. Jenna's car would be repossessed within days, and the fallout would be nuclear. But every time I hesitated, I heard Marcus's voice. Am I really going to have to leave when I turn 18? My phone buzzed with a text from Jake, conference call running long. Won't be home until 6. Love you. Perfect. That gave me time to handle the financial logistics before he got involved. Because he would get involved, and when he did, I needed to be prepared for war. I clicked the button. The automated system was surprisingly efficient. Remove authorized user? Yes. Discontinue automatic payments? Yes. Final payment responsibility transferred to primary account holder? Yes, that would be Jake, whose name was also on the loan. My phone rang immediately. The bank's customer service line. Mrs. Patterson? I'm calling to confirm the changes to your auto loan account. We show that automatic payments will cease after today's date, and the account will become past due if payment isn't received by the 15th. That's in 6 days. That's correct. And you understand that failure to maintain payments could result in vehicle repossession? I understand completely. After I hung up, I sat in the silence of my house and tried to imagine how this was going to play out. Jake would be furious, not just about the money, but about me making a unilateral decision about his daughter. Jenna would be devastated and probably twice as vindictive toward Marcus. And Marcus. God, I hoped Marcus would be safe from the crossfire. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Marcus's school. Hi Mrs. Patterson, this is Mrs. Chen, Marcus's counselor. Could you give me a call when you have a moment? Nothing urgent, just want to touch base about some social dynamics I've observed. My stomach dropped. The situation was already worse than I thought. Mrs. Chen answered on the first ring. Thank you for calling back. I wanted to discuss some interactions I've noticed between Marcus and some older students. I wasn't sure if you were aware that his sister attends here as well. Stepsister, I corrected automatically. And yes, I'm aware. What kind of interactions? Well, yesterday there was an incident in the cafeteria that several teachers witnessed. It seems there was some unkind commentary about Marcus's family status. I wanted to make sure he has support at home, because this kind of social rejection can be particularly difficult for children with his background. Children with his background. Former foster kids who'd already learned not to trust that love was permanent. Mrs. Chen, how bad was it? Really? A pause. Bad enough that 3 different teachers reported it to me. Mrs. Patterson, I've worked with many families over the years, and I rarely make these calls, but Marcus spent most of his afternoon classes in the bathroom. He's not okay. I closed my eyes. We're handling it. I hope so. Because if this continues, we may need to involve administration, and nobody wants that kind of attention on family dynamics. After we hung up, I realized the scope of what Jenna had done. This wasn't just sibling rivalry or teenage attitude. She'd publicly humiliated Marcus in front of teachers and students, and now the school was watching our family. If this escalated, there could be reports, investigations, questions about Marcus's stability in our home. She'd weaponized his greatest fear, that he didn't really belong anywhere, and turned it into a public spectacle. My laptop chimed with an email confirmation, auto payment cancellation processed successfully. There was no backing down now. In 6 days, Jenna's car would be gone, and she'd finally understand that actions have consequences. I just hoped my marriage would survive what was coming next. The text from Jenna came at 4:23 p.m., just as I was picking Marcus up from his after-school tutoring session. Car won't start. Need you to come get me. I'm at Westfield Mall. I stared at the message, my heart hammering. It was too early for repossession, I'd only canceled the payments this morning. But then again, we'd been 2 weeks behind before I started covering them, and Jake had been making minimum payments at best. Mom? Marcus looked up from buckling his seatbelt. Everything okay? Fine, baby. We need to make a quick stop to help Jenna. The lie tasted bitter. Nothing about this was going to be quick, and helping Jenna was the last thing I wanted to do right now. But I couldn't leave her stranded, no matter how much she deserved it. We found her standing next to her car in the mall parking lot, arms crossed, designer purse clutched against her chest like armor. Even from a distance, I could see the barely contained panic in her posture. It just died, she said the moment I got out of my car. I was leaving Forever 21 and it wouldn't turn over. The engine's not even trying. I popped her hood, though I already knew what we wouldn't find. When's the last time you put gas in it? I filled up on Sunday. She was chewing her bottom lip, a nervous habit she'd had since childhood according to Jake. This isn't a gas thing. Something's wrong with it. Marcus had climbed out and was standing awkwardly to the side, clearly unsure whether he was supposed to pretend yesterday hadn't happened. Jenna hadn't acknowledged his existence. Have you checked your banking app? I asked carefully. Sometimes when payments don't process. What are you talking about? The payment went through automatically. It always does. But she was already pulling out her phone, fingers flying across the screen. I watched her face change as she scrolled through her account activity. Confusion first, then understanding, then something that looked like genuine fear. The payment didn't go through. Her voice was small now, younger. But it was supposed to. It's automatic. Jenna. Oh God. She looked up at me with wide eyes. They can take it, can't they? If I miss payments, they can just take it? For a moment, she wasn't the calculating teenager who'd casually destroyed my son's sense of security. She was just a 19-year-old kid who'd never had to worry about consequences, suddenly realizing the ground wasn't as solid as she thought. We should call your dad, I said. No. The response was immediate, sharp with panic. No, he can't know about this. He's already stressed about the new contracts at work, and if he thinks I can't handle my responsibilities. She trailed off, but I could fill in the blanks. Jake had been talking for months about wanting Jenna to be more independent, more mature. A repossessed car would be the opposite of the responsible adult image she'd been trying to project. Please, she continued, and I realized she was talking to me. Actually asking for help. Can you just cover the payment? I'll pay you back as soon as my student loan money comes in. Marcus shifted beside me, and I caught him watching this interaction with fascination. His tormentor was begging for mercy from the mother she dismissed as irrelevant. Jenna, I said slowly, we need to talk about what happened yesterday. Her jaw tightened. This isn't about that. This is absolutely about that. Look, if this is some kind of punishment. You called my son trash. In public. You've been systematically trying to make him feel unwanted in his own home. My voice was steady, but I could feel Marcus tense beside me. So yes, this is absolutely a punishment. She glanced around the parking lot, clearly aware that we had an audience in Marcus, and her mask slipped back into place. Fine. I'm sorry Marcus felt bad about what I said. There. Can we fix this now? The non-apology hung in the air like a slap. Marcus actually stepped back, and I saw his shoulders hunch in that familiar defensive posture. That's not an apology, Jenna. Try again. This is ridiculous. You can't hold my car hostage because of some stupid sibling drama. I can do whatever I want. It's my money. The words came out harder than I'd intended, but I was done playing games. Her eyes widened with something that might have been respect, or might have been fear. My phone buzzed. Jake's number. We'll finish this at home, I said. Get in. The ride home was suffocating. Jenna sat in the passenger seat radiating fury while Marcus hunched in the back, and my phone kept buzzing with texts from Jake that I couldn't answer while driving. When we finally pulled into our driveway, Jake's truck was already there. My stomach dropped. He wasn't supposed to be home for another hour. Shit, Jenna muttered under her breath, then caught herself. Sorry, he's going to freak out. I turned off the engine and looked at her in the rearview mirror. For the first time since this whole mess started, she looked genuinely scared. Not manipulative scared or dramatic scared, but the kind of bone-deep terror that comes from disappointing someone whose opinion actually matters to you. Marcus, go inside and start your homework, I said. Jenna and I need to talk to your dad. Am I in trouble? Marcus's voice was small. No, baby. This has nothing to do with you. But we all knew that was a lie. Everything about this had to do with him. Jake met us at the front door, still in his work clothes, his face grim. The bank called me. They said someone removed the automatic payments on Jenna's car loan. They said the account is going to default. I took a breath. That was me. What? His voice cracked like a whip. What do you mean that was you? I removed myself as an authorized user and stopped the automatic payments from our joint account. Jake stared at me like I'd sprouted a second head. Without talking to me? Sarah, that car gets repossessed if we don't make that payment by Monday. I know. You know? He stepped closer, and I could see the vein in his temple starting to pulse. You deliberately sabotaged our daughter's car loan and you just, no? She's not our daughter, Jake. She's your daughter. And she's been systematically bullying Marcus at school. Jenna made a sound of protest, but Jake held up his hand without taking his eyes off me. What are you talking about? I told him. All of it. The comments about Marcus being temporary, the cafeteria incident, the conversation this morning where she refused to apologize and made it clear she considered Marcus disposable. I watched Jake's face change as I talked, confusion giving way to something harder. When I finished, he turned to Jenna. Is this true? She lifted her chin, defiant again now that she had her father's attention. I didn't say anything that wasn't true. Marcus isn't really my brother, and everyone knows it. I'm not going to pretend otherwise just to protect his feelings. The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear the kitchen clock ticking, the hum of the refrigerator, Marcus moving around upstairs. Jake was staring at his daughter like he'd never seen her before. Jenna, he said slowly, Marcus is my son. Legally, officially, permanently. Which makes him your brother, whether you like it or not. But Dad. No. His voice had the kind of authority I'd rarely heard him use with her. There's no but here. You don't get to decide who belongs in this family. I felt a flutter of hope, quickly followed by guilt. This was exactly what Jenna had been afraid of, losing her position as the golden child, having to share her father's loyalty. So what? Jenna's voice was rising, getting shrill. You're going to let her destroy my life over some foster kid's hurt feelings? The words hit the air like a physical blow. Jake went very still. Get in your room, he said quietly. Now. Dad, please, I didn't mean. Get. In. Your. Room. After she left, Jake and I stood in our foyer staring at each other across a chasm that hadn't existed that morning. We need to talk, he said. The conversation with Jake happened in our bedroom with the door closed, voices low but tension crackling like a live wire between us. Sarah, I get that you're upset about what Jenna said. I'm upset too. But you can't just unilaterally destroy her transportation without talking to me first. I sat on the edge of our bed, watching him pace back and forth like a caged animal. I tried talking. To her. This morning. She made it crystal clear that she has no intention of stopping, no remorse for what she's doing to Marcus, and no respect for our family structure. So you decided to teach her a lesson by threatening her car? I decided to stop enabling someone who's actively harming my child. Jake stopped pacing. He's our child, Sarah. Marcus is our child. The correction hung between us, and I realized we were both walking through a minefield. Every word mattered now. You're right. He's our child. Which is why I can't understand how you're more concerned about Jenna's car than about the fact that she's been psychologically torturing him. That's not. Jake ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I recognized from our worst fights. Look, what she said was wrong. Completely wrong. But she's 19, Sarah. She's still figuring things out. Taking away her car right before college starts? That's not teaching her a lesson, that's nuking her entire semester. Maybe she should have thought about that before she decided to wage war on a 12-year-old. My phone buzzed with a text. Then another. I glanced at the screen and felt my stomach drop. What? Jake asked, reading my expression. It's Marcus's school. 3 missed calls and, oh God. I opened the text thread. He never came back to after-school tutoring after I picked him up. They'd been looking for him for an hour. We both froze. Marcus was supposed to go back into the building after I dealt with Jenna's car situation. Instead, he'd heard every word of our confrontation in the car, watched his stepsister dismiss him as a foster kid, and apparently decided he'd had enough. His phone, Jake said, already moving toward the door. We tried calling him 6 times. Straight to voicemail. Jake was grabbing his keys when we heard the front door open. Marcus? I called out, relief flooding my voice. Yeah, it's me. He appeared in our bedroom doorway, backpack still on, his face carefully blank in that way that meant he was working overtime to hold himself together. Baby, where were you? The school called. I went to the park. I needed to think. He looked between Jake and me. Are you getting divorced? The question hit like a physical blow. What? Marcus, no. Why would you? Because you were fighting about me. Again. And Jenna was crying when I came in, and she said. He paused, swallowing hard. She said that I ruined everything and maybe everyone would be happier if I just went back into the system. The world tilted. Jake made a sound like he'd been punched. She said what? Jake's voice was deadly quiet. It's okay, Marcus said quickly, reading the danger in Jake's tone. I know she didn't mean it. She's just upset about her car. I heard you guys talking about it. But it wasn't okay. None of this was okay. Jenna had just crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Threatening a former foster child with re-entering the system was psychological warfare of the cruelest kind. Jake was already moving toward the door. Where is she? Dad, don't. Marcus grabbed Jake's arm. Please. It'll just make everything worse. Marcus, Jake said gently, go downstairs and get yourself a snack, okay? Your mom and I need to handle this. After Marcus left, Jake turned to me with an expression I'd never seen before. Cold. Determined. The car stays repossessed. Jake. No. You were right. I should have handled this months ago. He paused at the bedroom door. And Sarah? When this is over, we're having a serious conversation about communication in this marriage. But right now, I need to go explain to my daughter exactly what family means. I heard his footsteps on the stairs, heard Jenna's door open, heard the beginning of a conversation that was going to change everything. And I realized that in trying to protect my son, I might have just blown up my entire family. The shouting started 20 minutes after Jake went upstairs, and it was loud enough that I could hear it clearly from the kitchen where I was pretending to make dinner while actually just moving pots around to keep my hands busy. Don't care if you think it's unfair. You threatened to send your brother back into foster care. He's not my brother. The sound of something hitting a wall made me flinch. Then Jake's voice, lower but somehow more terrifying, pack a bag. You're going to your mother's. My blood turned to ice. Jake's ex-wife lived 3 hours away, and they barely spoke except for holidays and emergencies. If he was sending Jenna there, this wasn't just a punishment, this was exile. Heavy footsteps on the stairs, then Jake appeared in the kitchen doorway, his face flushed with anger. She's leaving tonight, he said without preamble. I'm driving her to Linda's. Jake, maybe we should. Sarah, she told our son that everyone would be happier if he went back into the system. She said it to his face, 20 minutes after we had a conversation about family loyalty. His voice cracked slightly. What if he believes her? What if he thinks we're just waiting for an excuse to get rid of him? The question hung between us like a live grenade. Because that was the real horror of what Jenna had done, she'd weaponized Marcus's deepest fear and turned it into a threat. Every adopted kid, especially former foster children, lived with a secret terror that their new family might change their minds. How long? I asked. I don't know. Until she can prove she understands what she's done. Until I trust her around Marcus again. Jake slumped against the counter. God, Sarah, what if we're too late? What if the damage is already done? Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. We looked at each other with matching expressions of dread. Nobody good news ever arrived unannounced during family crisis mode. I opened the front door to find Mrs. Chen, Marcus's school counselor, standing on our porch with a manila folder under her arm. Mrs. Patterson, I'm so sorry to disturb you at home, but I tried calling several times. We need to talk about Marcus, and I'm afraid it can't wait until tomorrow. My throat went dry. What happened? May I come in? Jake appeared behind me as I led Mrs. Chen to our living room. She declined coffee, set her folder on the coffee table, and got straight to the point. After our conversation this morning, I did some investigating into the social dynamics Marcus has been experiencing. I spoke with several teachers and students who witnessed yesterday's cafeteria incident. She opened her folder and pulled out what looked like witness statements. Mrs. Patterson, Mr. Patterson, I've been a school counselor for 15 years, and I've rarely seen such deliberate, systematic emotional abuse between family members. This wasn't a one-time sibling argument. According to multiple sources, your stepdaughter has been conducting what I can only call a campaign designed to isolate Marcus socially and undermine his sense of family security. Jake went very still beside me. What exactly are you saying? I'm saying that several students have reported hearing her tell other children that Marcus was dumped by his real family, that he has behavioral problems from being in foster care, and that your family is only keeping him temporarily. Mrs. Chen's voice was professionally calm, but I could hear the underlying anger. She's been systematically destroying his reputation and his peer relationships. The room started spinning. How long has this been going on? Based on what I've gathered, at least 2 months. Probably longer. Mrs. Chen leaned forward. Mr. and Mrs. Patterson, I need to ask directly, are you aware that Marcus has been eating lunch in the library every day for the past 3 weeks because he's too embarrassed to sit in the cafeteria? I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. He never said anything. Children from foster backgrounds often don't. They're conditioned not to complain, not to rock the boat, not to give their families any reason to reconsider the placement. She pulled out another sheet of paper. This is from his English teacher. Marcus wrote an essay last week about temporary happiness and how some good things aren't meant to last forever. Mrs. Rodriguez was concerned enough to flag it. Jake made a strangled sound and buried his face in his hands. There's something else, Mrs. Chen continued gently. This afternoon, after Marcus returned from his unauthorized absence, he asked to speak with me privately. He wanted to know what the process would be for a child to voluntarily re-enter foster care. The world stopped. He asked what? Jake's voice was raw. He's convinced that his presence is destroying your family. He believes that removing himself from the equation would solve everyone's problems. Mrs. Chen's expression was grave. Mr. and Mrs. Patterson, this child is in crisis. And frankly, so is your family. The silence that followed Mrs. Chen's words was deafening. I could hear my own heartbeat, the tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway, the muffled sound of Jenna moving around upstairs. Normal house sounds that felt completely surreal in the context of learning that my 12-year-old son wanted to put himself back into the foster system. Where is Marcus now? I managed to ask. He's in his room, Jake said quietly. I told him to start his homework while we... He gestured helplessly at Mrs. Chen. While we dealt with this. Mrs. Chen nodded. I'd like to speak with him, if that's all right. And I think we need to discuss some immediate intervention strategies. This level of emotional distress doesn't resolve itself. As if summoned by our conversation, footsteps appeared on the stairs. But instead of Marcus, Jenna came down carrying a duffel bag, her face streaked with tears and mascara. Dad, please don't make me go to Mom's. I'll apologize to Marcus, I'll do whatever you want, just please. She stopped short when she saw Mrs. Chen, and I watched her face cycle through confusion, recognition, and then pure panic. Oh God, she whispered. The school called. Mrs. Chen stood up, and suddenly her professional demeanor shifted into something more protective. You must be Jenna. I'm Mrs. Chen, Marcus's counselor. I didn't know, Jenna said quickly, dropping her bag and looking between all of us. I didn't know he was eating lunch alone. I didn't know it was that bad. I was angry about the attention he gets and I said some stupid things, but I never meant. You told him that everyone would be happier if he went back into foster care, Jake interrupted, his voice like steel. You said that to a child who's already been abandoned multiple times. But I didn't mean it. Jenna's voice cracked. I was upset about my car and I just wanted to hurt someone and he was there and she looked at Mrs. Chen with growing horror. He really asked about going back. Mrs. Chen's expression didn't change. Jenna, I need you to understand something. Children from traumatic backgrounds don't process rejection the way other kids do. When Marcus hears that his family might not want him, he doesn't think this person is being mean. He thinks this confirms what I already suspected about myself. I can fix this, Jenna said desperately. I can talk to the kids at school, I can tell them I was lying, I can. You can start by staying away from him, Jake said flatly. Your mother's expecting you in 3 hours. Jake, I said softly, because watching Jenna fall apart was harder than I'd expected. Even after everything she'd done, she was still a 19-year-old who just realized the scope of the damage she'd caused. Maybe we should. My phone rang. Marcus's number. All 3 adults froze. Marcus was upstairs. His phone was calling me from inside the house. I answered on the first ring. Marcus? Mom? His voice was muffled, strange. Can you come upstairs? Something's wrong with my window and I can't get it closed. Jake was already moving toward the stairs, but something in Marcus's tone made me grab his arm. What kind of wrong? I asked into the phone. It's stuck open and it's getting cold in here. I looked at Jake, and I could see the same terrible understanding dawning in his eyes. Marcus's room was on the 2nd floor. His window faced the backyard. And a 12-year-old boy who just asked about voluntarily returning to foster care might be thinking about more permanent solutions to his family's problems. We're coming up right now, baby, I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. Don't touch the window, okay? Sometimes those old frames can be tricky. Mrs. Chen was already standing, her professional mask slipping to show genuine alarm. Should I call? No, Jake said quickly. Not yet. Let us talk to him first. As we headed toward the stairs, I caught sight of Jenna's face. The selfish, calculating teenager was completely gone, replaced by raw terror. This is my fault, she whispered. Oh God, this is all my fault. I found Marcus sitting on his bed, staring at his open window, but he wasn't anywhere near it. Relief flooded through me so fast my knees nearly buckled. Hey baby, I said, keeping my voice light. Having trouble with a window? He looked up at me with those big brown eyes, and I could see he'd been crying. It won't close. I tried pulling it down but it's stuck, and now it's cold and I can't fix it. Jake moved past me to examine the window frame. Looks like it just needs some muscle, he said, wrestling with the old wood until it finally slid shut. These old windows get swollen when it rains. Thanks, Dad. Marcus's voice was small, grateful. He had no idea we'd all panicked thinking he might try to climb out of it. Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway. Marcus? I'm Mrs. Chen from school. Your parents and I were talking about some things that had been happening, and I was hoping we could chat. Marcus's shoulders immediately hunched. Am I in trouble? I know I left campus without permission, but I just needed to think in. You're not in trouble, I said quickly, sitting down next to him on the bed. But we're worried about you. Mrs. Chen told us you've been eating lunch in the library. He looked down at his hands. The cafeteria is loud. Marcus. Jake sat down on his other side. We also heard you asked about going back into foster care. The silence stretched so long I thought he wasn't going to answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. I didn't mean I wanted to leave. I wanted to know if it was an option. In case you guys decided things would be easier without me. My heart shattered into a million pieces. Baby, why would you think we'd want things easier without you? Because everyone's fighting all the time now, and it's about me. Jenna's getting sent away because of me, and you and Dad were yelling about me, and maybe. He wiped his nose with his sleeve. Maybe she's right. Maybe some kids aren't meant to stay anywhere permanently. Mrs. Chen stepped forward. Marcus, can I tell you something I've learned in 15 years of working with kids? He nodded without looking up. The kids who worry about being too much trouble are never the ones who actually are too much trouble. You know why? Because caring about how your actions affect your family means you're exactly the kind of kid any parent would be lucky to have. But Jenna said. Jenna was wrong. Jake's voice was firm. Completely, totally wrong. And the reason she's going to your aunt's house isn't because of you. It's because she made a choice to be cruel, and choices have consequences. I heard footsteps in the hallway, and then Jenna appeared in the doorway, still clutching her duffel bag. She looked at Marcus with an expression I'd never seen from her before, genuine remorse mixed with something that looked like fear. Marcus? Her voice cracked. Can I talk to you for a minute? Before I have to leave? Mrs. Chen stepped forward slightly, protective. I'm not sure that's. Please, Jenna said, looking directly at our son. I need to tell you something important, and I might not get another chance. Marcus looked at me, then at Jake, then back at Jenna. Okay, he said quietly. As Jenna stepped into the room, I realized this conversation could either begin healing the damage she'd caused, or make everything infinitely worse. And we were about to find out which one it would be. Jenna set her duffel bag down carefully and moved toward Marcus's bed like she was approaching a wounded animal. Mrs. Chen remained in the doorway, clearly ready to intervene if necessary, while Jake and I exchanged worried glances. Marcus, Jenna began, her voice shaky, I need you to know that everything I said to you was a lie. All of it. Marcus looked up at her, his expression guarded. What do you mean? I mean I was angry and jealous, and I said terrible things that weren't true because I wanted to hurt you. And that was wrong. Really, really wrong. She sat down on the floor so she was looking up at him instead of down. You're not trash. You're not temporary. You're not a charity case. You belong here more than I do. Jenna, Jake started, but she held up her hand. No, Dad, it's true. Marcus never says mean things about anyone. He helps with dishes without being asked. He actually listens when people talk. He makes this family better. Her voice broke completely. I make it worse. Marcus was staring at her like he'd never seen her before. But you said. I said horrible things because I was scared that Dad loved you more than me. Which is stupid, because love isn't a competition, but I was acting like it was. Tears were streaming down her face now. And I was scared that you were going to take my place as the good kid, so I tried to make you look bad instead of just being better myself. Mrs. Chen was watching this interaction with professional interest, taking mental notes I was sure would end up in Marcus's file. The thing is, Jenna continued, wiping her nose with her sleeve, I've been the center of Dad's world for so long that I forgot how to share. And when you came along and he was so happy about having a son, I felt like I was disappearing. So I tried to make you disappear instead. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. But I never wanted to take your place. I just wanted to have a place. You do have a place. You have the biggest place. And I'm sorry I tried to take that away from you. Jenna looked at Jake, then at me. I'm sorry I tried to take it away from all of you. My phone buzzed with a text, and I glanced down automatically. It was from Jake's ex-wife, Linda. Jenna's room is ready. Drive safe. What happened? The reminder that Jenna was still leaving tonight cast a shadow over what felt like the beginning of real progress. But before I could figure out how to address it, my phone rang. Unknown number. Sorry, I should take this, I said, stepping into the hallway. Mrs. Patterson? This is Mike Torres from Eastside Auto Recovery. We're here to collect a 2019 Honda Civic registered to Jake Patterson. Is this a good time? My blood turned to ice. I'd been so focused on the family crisis that I'd forgotten the repo man was coming. What? No, wait. Ma'am, the account is 4 days past due and we have authorization for immediate recovery. The vehicle is currently in your driveway. I looked out Marcus's window toward the street. Sure enough, there was a tow truck with flashing lights parked behind Jenna's car. Hang on, I said into the phone, then called down the hall, Jake. We have a problem. The sound of multiple footsteps, and suddenly everyone was crowded around Marcus's window watching a man in coveralls attach chains to Jenna's Honda. Oh God, Jenna whispered. It's really happening. Jake was already pulling out his phone. How much do we owe? I can call the bank right now. Mr. Patterson? The repo man had spotted us in the window and was walking toward our front door. Could we speak for a moment? What happened next felt like a scene from someone else's life. Jake went downstairs to talk to the repo man while the rest of us watched from Marcus's window like spectators at our own family's destruction. I could see Jake's hands gesturing, could see him pulling out his wallet, could see the repo man shaking his head. He's trying to pay them off, Mrs. Chen observed quietly. But once the recovery order is issued, most companies won't accept partial payment. Jenna was crying silently, watching her car get loaded onto the truck. I can't get to college without it. My job interview on Friday. My textbooks are in the back seat. I can get the textbooks, Marcus said quietly. We all turned to look at him. I can ask the man to let us get your textbooks out. Personal stuff doesn't get repossessed, right? The simple kindness of it, Marcus offering to help the person who'd been systematically destroying his life, broke something open in all of us. Marcus, Jenna said through her tears, why are you being nice to me? He shrugged. Because you said you were sorry. And because you're my sister. Just then, Jake appeared in the doorway, his face grim. They won't take a payment. The car's gone. And as we watched the tow truck disappear down our street with Jenna's Honda, I realized that this was just the beginning. Tomorrow, she'd still need to get to her job. Next week, she'd still need to get to college. And despite everything that had happened, we were still a family. Which meant we were going to have to figure out how to rebuild from the wreckage we'd all helped create. The aftermath of the repo truck's departure left us all standing in Marcus's room in stunned silence. Through the window, we could see our neighbors discreetly peering from behind curtains, the Hendersons from across the street, Mrs. Kim from next door. Nothing said family in crisis quite like a repossession in broad daylight in our quiet suburban neighborhood. Well, Mrs. Chen said softly, this certainly changes the immediate situation. Jake ran his hands through his hair, that familiar stress gesture I'd seen 1,000 times. Linda's expecting Jenna in 2 hours, and now she has no way to get there. I can drive her, I heard myself say, surprising everyone including myself. Jenna looked at me with something between gratitude and confusion. You'd do that? After everything? Before I could answer, my phone rang again. This time it was a number I recognized, Marcus's pediatrician's office. Mrs. Patterson? This is Nancy from Dr. Williams' office. We had a consultation request come in from Marcus's school counselor about scheduling a psychological evaluation. I wanted to confirm the appointment we have scheduled for tomorrow morning. My stomach dropped. Mrs. Chen had been busy. I'm sorry, what appointment? Mrs. Chen stepped forward, looking slightly embarrassed. I took the liberty of making the referral while we were waiting for you to come upstairs. Given Marcus's questions about re-entering foster care, I felt immediate professional intervention was warranted. You scheduled therapy without asking us? Jake's voice had an edge to it. I scheduled an evaluation. It's standard protocol when a child expresses thoughts about family dissolution, especially a child with Marcus's background. Mrs. Chen's professional mask was firmly back in place. The appointment is voluntary, but I strongly recommend keeping it. Marcus was looking between all of us with growing alarm. Am I crazy? Is that why everyone's acting weird? No, baby, you're not crazy, I said quickly. Sometimes when families go through difficult times, it helps to talk to someone who isn't emotionally involved. But what if the therapist thinks I should go back to foster care? His voice got smaller with each word. What if they think this family isn't working? Jake knelt down next to Marcus's bed. Buddy, therapy isn't about taking you away from us. It's about making sure you have all the support you need to feel safe and happy here. Which is where you belong. Forever. My phone buzzed with a text from Linda. Jake, what's taking so long? Jenna was supposed to be here an hour ago. Then another text, this one from my sister, saw the repo truck on the neighborhood Facebook page. Everything okay? Then my mother, honey, Mrs. Henderson called. She's worried about you. I stared at my phone in horror. The neighbors are posting about us on social media. Jenna groaned and buried her face in her hands. Perfect. Now everyone knows. Knows what? Marcus asked. That our family is falling apart, Jenna muttered. Hey. Jake's voice was firm. Our family is not falling apart. We're having problems, and we're fixing them. There's a difference. Mrs. Chen cleared her throat diplomatically. Perhaps this would be a good time for me to leave and let you all process today's events. But I do want to emphasize that tomorrow's appointment could be very beneficial for Marcus, and frankly, family counseling might be something to consider for everyone. After she left, we sat in Marcus's room as the afternoon light faded, none of us quite sure what to do next. Jenna still needed to get to her mother's. Marcus still needed reassurance that his world wasn't crumbling. Jake and I still needed to figure out how to pay for the car that was now somewhere in a repo lot across town. And in 12 hours, we all had to wake up and pretend we knew how to be a normal family again. So, Marcus said into the silence, are we still having tacos for dinner? Despite everything, I started laughing. Because in the middle of repossessions and therapy appointments and family counselors, my 12-year-old son was worried about Tuesday taco night. Yeah, baby, I said. We're definitely still having tacos. But as I headed downstairs to start cooking, I couldn't shake the feeling that our problems were just beginning. The next morning arrived with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer. I woke up at 5:30 a.m. to my phone buzzing with notifications, 17 missed calls from Jake's mother, 4 voicemails from Linda complaining about Jenna's attitude during the 3-hour drive last night, and a text from my bank alerting me to an overdraft fee. The overdraft fee. In all the chaos, I'd forgotten that the automatic payment I'd canceled was scheduled to come out today anyway. Apparently the bank system hadn't updated fast enough. So now we were out the car payment money and hit with fees for insufficient funds. I was staring at my phone in the kitchen when Jake stumbled in, looking like he'd slept about as well as I had. Coffee, he mumbled, then stopped. Sarah, why do you look like someone died? I held up my phone. We're broke. Before he could respond, Marcus appeared in the doorway already dressed for school, his backpack neatly packed, looking more put together than either of his parents. Mom? Mrs. Chen said I should tell you if I feel anxious about anything. Well, I feel anxious about the therapy appointment today. Jake and I exchanged glances. In all the drama, we'd barely processed that Marcus was supposed to see a psychologist in 4 hours. What kind of anxious? I asked gently. The kind where I keep thinking about what happens if they ask me questions I don't know how to answer. Like what if they ask if I'm happy here and I say yes, but they think I'm lying because of all the fighting? My heart clenched. Marcus, therapists aren't trying to trick you. They're trying to help. But what if helping means deciding I should live somewhere else? Jake sat down heavily at the kitchen table. Buddy, that's not how it works. Nobody gets to decide where you live except your mom and me. And we've already decided. Forever. The doorbell rang, which seemed impossible since it was barely 7 a.m. Through the kitchen window, I could see a familiar car in our driveway. Oh no, I breathed. Jake's mother stood on our front porch in full battle regalia, designer purse, perfectly applied makeup at dawn, and the expression she wore when she was about to fix everyone's problems whether they wanted her help or not. Margaret, Jake said as he opened the door, his voice carefully neutral. This is early. Well, someone needs to talk sense into this family. She swept past him into our foyer, her eyes taking in everything, Marcus's school backpack by the stairs, the coffee mugs we hadn't washed from yesterday, the general air of chaos. I'd been calling for hours. Grandma? Marcus appeared, and his face lit up with genuine pleasure. Whatever else Margaret's faults, she'd always been good to him. Hello, sweetheart. I brought you those cookies you like. She handed him a bakery box, then fixed Jake and me with her most disapproving stare. Now, someone want to explain why my granddaughter called me crying at midnight about living with her mother and having her car repossessed? My stomach sank. Jenna had called Margaret. Which meant this wasn't just a concerned grandmother visit, this was an intervention. Mom, Jake said carefully, it's complicated. It's not that complicated. Jenna made a mistake, she apologized, and you two decided to destroy her college plans anyway. That's not parenting, Jake. That's revenge. Marcus was listening to this exchange with growing alarm, cookie box forgotten in his hands. Maybe we should discuss this privately, I suggested, glancing meaningfully at Marcus. Oh no, Margaret said firmly. Marcus is part of this family, and he deserves to understand what's happening. Don't you, sweetheart? The way she said it, with that slight emphasis on part of this family, made it clear that Margaret was very much on Team Marcus. Which should have been reassuring, except that it meant she was also very much not on Team Jenna. And that was going to make everything so much worse. Margaret's declaration that Marcus deserved to understand what was happening sent a chill down my spine. The last thing our fragile 12-year-old needed was to be caught in the middle of a grandmother versus parents showdown. Actually, Mom, Jake said firmly, Marcus has school and we need to get him ready. But Margaret was already settling onto our couch like she planned to stay for hours. School doesn't start for an hour. And I think Marcus should hear how proud I am of him for handling all this drama so maturely. Marcus shifted uncomfortably, still holding the cookie box. Grandma, you don't have to. Nonsense. You've been nothing but kind and patient while everyone else has been acting like children. She shot a pointed look at Jake and me. Some people could learn from your example. My phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Williams' office. Reminder, Marcus Patterson, 9 a.m. appointment today. Please arrive 15 minutes early for paperwork. We need to get ready, I said to Margaret. Marcus has an appointment this morning. What kind of appointment? Her voice sharpened with concern. Marcus looked at me with panic in his eyes. We hadn't discussed what to tell people about the therapy evaluation, and now he was trapped between his grandmother's direct question and his own confusion about what was happening. Just a checkup, I said quickly. A checkup at 9 a.m. on a school day? Margaret's eyebrows rose. Sarah, what aren't you telling me? The front door opened without warning, and Jenna walked in looking exhausted and defiant. My heart stopped. Jenna? Jake stood up so fast his coffee mug toppled. What are you doing here? You're supposed to be at your mother's. Mom kicked me out. Jenna dropped a duffel bag by the door with a thud. Apparently 3 hours of me crying about my car was more than she could handle. She said I needed to come home and face the consequences of my actions instead of running away. Margaret's face went through several expressions, surprise, anger, and then something that looked like calculation. Well, that's just perfect. Linda dumped you back here without even calling. Grandma? Marcus's voice was small. Does this mean Jenna's staying? The question hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Jenna looked at Marcus with an expression I couldn't read. Jake looked like he was developing a migraine, and Margaret looked like she was gearing up for war. Of course she's staying, Margaret announced. This is her home. Actually, Jake said, his voice dangerously quiet, that's not really your decision to make, Mom. Isn't it? Because from where I'm sitting, you two adults have managed to traumatize both of your children in the span of 24 hours. Maybe some outside perspective is exactly what this family needs. My phone rang. Dr. Williams' office again. I have to take this, I said, stepping into the kitchen. Mrs. Patterson? We're calling to confirm that Marcus will be accompanied by both parents today. Sometimes children respond better when they feel supported by their full family unit. Through the kitchen doorway, I could see Jenna sitting on the stairs, Margaret lecturing Jake about proper conflict resolution, and Marcus standing in the middle of it all looking like he wanted to disappear. Actually, I said into the phone, we might need to reschedule. We're having some family complications this morning. I understand, but I should mention that Mrs. Chin flagged this as a priority evaluation. If we reschedule, the next available appointment isn't for 2 weeks. 2 weeks of Marcus wondering if he was crazy. 2 weeks of him watching this family drama and thinking it was somehow his fault. 2 weeks of Jenna being back in the house with no resolution to the original problem. We'll be there, I said, making a decision that felt like jumping off a cliff. All of us. Because if Dr. Williams wanted to see our family dynamics, he was about to get the full catastrophe. The waiting room at Dr. Williams' office was clearly designed to be calming, soft blues and greens, nature magazines, a small fountain that made gentle trickling sounds. None of it was working. Margaret sat rigidly in her chair, periodically checking her watch and muttering about amateur hour scheduling. Jenna slouched in the corner scrolling through her phone, pointedly ignoring everyone. Jake paced near the windows, stopping every few seconds to glance at the receptionist like he could will our appointment to start early. And Marcus sat pressed against my side, his leg bouncing with nervous energy. Family of Marcus Patterson? A woman in her 50s appeared at the inner door, clipboard in hand. I'm Dr. Williams. I understand we have quite a group today. I'm his grandmother, Margaret announced, standing up. I insisted on coming to provide some stability during this difficult time. Dr. Williams' eyebrows rose slightly as she took in our unconventional family therapy ensemble. Of course. Why don't we all head back to my office? The office was larger than I'd expected, with enough seating for our entire dysfunctional parade. Dr. Williams settled behind her desk and studied us with professional interest. So, Marcus, Mrs. Chin tells me you've been having some tough times at school. Can you tell me a little about what's been going on? Marcus glanced around the room nervously. Do I have to talk about it in front of everyone? You can say whatever feels comfortable. But sometimes it helps when families hear things together, so everyone understands the situation. The situation, Margaret interjected, is that some people have been making mountains out of molehills and punishing the wrong children. Dr. Williams turned to her with polite firmness. Mrs. Patterson. Margaret Patterson. And I think it's important you know that Marcus has been handling this family crisis with remarkable maturity, unlike certain adults who shall remain nameless. I felt my face flush. Jake stopped pacing and shot his mother a warning look. Grandma, Jenna said quietly from her corner, please don't. Don't what? Don't point out that you apologized sincerely and your father still banished you to your mother's? Don't mention that taking away a college student's transportation is vindictive and... Mrs. Patterson, Dr. Williams interrupted smoothly, I appreciate your concern for your family, but right now I'd like to hear from Marcus. Marcus had been shrinking smaller and smaller in his chair. Now he looked up with tears in his eyes. This is exactly what I was afraid of. Everyone's fighting again and it's because of me. It's not because of you, Jake said immediately. Marcus, none of this is your fault. But if I wasn't here, Jenna wouldn't have said those things, and Mom wouldn't have taken her car, and Grandma wouldn't be mad at everyone, and our family would be a lot less interesting, Jenna interrupted softly. All eyes turned to her. Marcus, I've been thinking about what I said yesterday, and I need to tell you something else. Dr. Williams leaned forward with interest. Go ahead, Jenna. Before Marcus came to live with us, it was just me and Dad. And yeah, I got all the attention, but I was also lonely. Really lonely. Dad worked all the time, and I didn't have anyone to talk to or hang out with. She looked directly at Marcus. When you moved in, suddenly there was someone who actually wanted to play board games and watch movies and just be around. I forgot how good that felt until I almost lost it. Margaret's expression softened slightly. Jenna, honey. I'm not done, Grandma. The reason I said those awful things wasn't because I wanted Marcus to leave. It was because I was scared he was going to become Dad's favorite, and then I'd go back to being lonely again. But trying to hurt him just made everything worse. My phone buzzed with a text. Then another. I glanced down and felt my heart stop. The first text was from our mortgage company, payment past due. Please contact us immediately. The second was from Marcus's school, emergency contact needed. Jenna Patterson involved in parking lot incident. Please call main office. I'm sorry, I said to Dr. Williams, but we have an emergency. As I showed Jake the texts, I realized our family crisis had just gone from complicated to catastrophic. And we were about to find out if we could survive what was coming next. The phone call from Marcus's school sent us racing from DR. Williams' office in a convoy of family dysfunction, Margaret in her Cadillac, Jake and me in his truck, and Jenna riding shotgun because someone needed to explain what parking lot incident meant when she wasn't even supposed to be on campus. I was trying to get my textbooks back from Alyssa, Jenna explained as we pulled into the school parking lot. She borrowed them before everything happened. And when some kids started making comments about the repo truck being at our house, I lost it. What we found was Jenna's former friend Alyssa crying in the principal's office while her mother demanded Jenna be suspended for verbal assault and harassment. Apparently, when Alyssa had made a joke about trashy families who can't pay their bills, Jenna had unleashed 3 years of private school vocabulary in a very public defense of our family. She called Marcus foster trash, Jenna told Principal Morrison defiantly. So I told her she was a spoiled brat whose daddy bought her personality along with her BMW. Margaret actually smiled at that. The meeting that followed was surreal. Principal Morrison, clearly overwhelmed by having 5 adults in his office arguing about teenage drama, kept trying to focus on Jenna's inappropriate language while Margaret demanded to know why the school wasn't addressing the bullying that had started this whole mess. Furthermore, Margaret declared, pointing her manicured finger at Alyssa's mother, if your daughter has been spreading rumors about my grandson, perhaps we should discuss which child is actually the problem here. It took 2 hours, 3 phone calls to the superintendent, and Margaret threatening to call my lawyer and the local news station before we reached a resolution. Jenna would serve 1 day of in-school suspension, Alyssa would write a formal apology to Marcus, and the school would implement a family respect policy to prevent further incidents. As we walked out of the building, Jenna turned to Margaret with wonder. Grandma, you called Marcus your grandson. Well, of course he's my grandson. Don't be ridiculous. But you always said that adopted kids weren't really. I never said any such thing. Margaret's voice was crisp with authority. I may have questioned the wisdom of certain parenting decisions, but I have never, ever suggested that Marcus wasn't fully part of this family. We stood in the school parking lot, our bizarre family unit, and I realized something had shifted. Not fixed, we still had massive problems to solve, but shifted in a way that felt like hope. So what now? Jake asked. Dr. Williams had followed us to the school, bless her professional dedication, and now she stepped forward with a gentle smile. Now you go home and have dinner together. All of you. Because whatever else is broken, the love in this family is real. 6 months later, we're still not perfect. Jenna's working 2 part-time jobs to save for a used car. Marcus sees Dr. Williams every other week and hasn't asked about foster care since that day. Jake and I are in couples counseling and have learned to communicate before making unilateral financial decisions. And Margaret babysits every Tuesday so Jake and I can have date night. But the most important change? Marcus eats lunch in the cafeteria now, usually at a table full of kids who think having a big sister who'll verbally destroy anyone who messes with her little brother is pretty cool. Sometimes the best families are the ones that almost fall apart but choose to fight for each other instead.